Dear Magda Szubanski, hello, my name is Dr. Sophie Reed Singer. I'm writing you today for two reasons. First, to ask for help. Another is that I struggle with pronouncing your last name, which I empathize with because I have a disability called spondylometaphyseal dysplasia Kozlowski type. I think actually my mum is the only one who knows how to say it correctly. I try my best to understand the complexities of my disability, but basically, my whole skeleton is deformed. I got the achy bones. This is a huge bummer, but I'm still a person who lives and works and generally potters around in my community. Magda Szubanski. I have been writing to our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to tell him that the application process for the disability support pension is so confusing, distressing, and degrading that disabled people cannot access it, and he has yet to reply. Magda Szubanski, you have far more sway over Australia than Elbow. Magda, I am not just writing you as a joke. I think you're actually someone who might be interested to learn about how inaccessible the disability support pension is. Personally, it took me 7 years to access the DSP. Magda, with your upcoming 3-part documentary series, Magda's Big National Health Check, you no doubt have contacts all throughout the healthcare system. Please call on those contacts to contribute to feedback on the impairment tables, which you can submit in the link tree in my bio. Magda Szubanski. The latest statistics from the Department of Social Services from June estimate that 43.1% of the 831,601 people on job seeker payments were sick or disabled. This is because while applying for DSP, you are encouraged to apply for job seeker. Your mutual work obligations are excused until your likely rejection. The 43.1% demographic of sick and disabled people on job seeker are people who have been assessed as having a disability or sickness which prevents them from working full-time. The way working full-time is determined is really inappropriate and downright silly. Magda, I know you are beginning to open up about your lived experience with illness and anxiety in a way which I admire after reading this Women's Weekly article on you. In the article, you state, "We have a very good health system, but there are things that work against you when you are trying to be healthy, so it's looking at what the problems are and also looking at solutions. 50% of Australians are dealing with chronic health issues, and I am one of those. I have autoimmune arthritis and I get migraines, so I know what it's like. Sorry to out you like this, but I am assessing that you are disabled. Trust me, I'm a doctor. This is not an insult. In fact, admitting you are disabled can be quite liberating. You might think, I'm not disabled, I don't use a wheelchair, and I'm fiercely independent. But neither do I, and independence is my most important value. My disability is easier to identify. I can't hide mine. If you saw me on the street, you might think, quietly, to yourself, that person is disabled. But I am struggling to prove I am disabled, because the Australian government only conceptualises disability in relation to my capacity to lift 2-litre milk. Magda Szubanski. Being that you are disabled, you know how unpleasant being in hospital is, and how hard it is to receive news regarding your health, and days in bed when life gets too hard, and how expensive treatment can be, and just how long obtaining a diagnosis takes. You are very fortunate to have the income to manage your disability with medication and various other things. Magda Szubanski. Imagine if you had to manage your disability on job seeker. This means, in addition to living off $334.20 a week, you would also be required to attend Centrelink meetings where you would be greeted by a security guard, apply to 20 jobs per month, and eventually work for welfare. Imagine how hard it would be to manage your health and maintain your independence while also finding time to spend 40 minutes on hold to talk to anybody at Centrelink to ask why your payment has suddenly stopped with no explanation. Magda, if things went really downhill for you, you would be ineligible for disability support pension. You'd be placed onto the partial payment of job seeker. To qualify for disability support pension, you would have to pass on impairment table 1 of 15 for functions requiring physical exertion and stamina. The passing criteria for this table is you can't sit still for 3 hours. You also can't use public transport and you can't drive. Someone has to drive you to the supermarket, but then if you can make it from the car park to the store, you are ineligible for help. Also, you must prove you struggle to put the laundry away, and also gardening is out of the question for you. You won't be able to prove this yourself. You'll need to pay a medical professional hundreds to thousands of dollars to advocate for you with a functional capacity assessment. You might assert, Dr. Sophie, none of that relates to my disability. And I might reply, you were right, Magda Szubanski. I had to prove all of these things to access the DSP this year, even though I was diagnosed at 2 years old. In 95 weeks, I will have to prove I am useless to access welfare again. This is not congruent with my anxiety disorder and lack thereof confidence. This year, Centrelink wanted to grade me on lower limb function, and I had to beg to be graded on a basis of my capacity for watering my plants. Luckily, I'm a shit gardener. I can't pass on Table 3 because, as the nurse conducting my job capacity assessment this year wrote, a higher rating, 20 points, was unable to be given as the client is able to walk from a car park into an appointment, stand up from a sitting position without assistance, and use public transport without assistance. During the JCA, he was like, you say you can't get off the floor by yourself, but how about getting off a chair? I had been up till 4 a.m. the previous day, studying the tables, so I knew this one was going to be the kicker. I tried my best by arguing. If the chair is down low, I may need a hand, but otherwise gravity assists. I spent the long wait for his assessment to return, tormented for an answer. I anticipated a rejection, but I thought it would be because I forgot to say sometimes slippery surfaces can be a bit tricky. His eventual rejection was particularly frustrating because the appointment he is referencing is my weekly physiotherapy appointment. I have funding for this through the NDIS, and one of my short-term goals is, in this plan, I would like to be able to build my capacity to walk unaided safely and manage my chronic pain. Magda Szubanski. Some people with my condition need a wheelchair. Magda Szubanski. I have been trying to learn how to walk, but the Commonwealth government is mandating that I stay seated. Magda. If Britney Spears can be an icon for disability rights, then so can you. Please speak up about this issue, that the disability support pension is inaccessible to disabled peoples. Magda Szubanski. I know you struggle with anxiety too. Imagine if every time you talk to Centrelink, they threaten to take your independence away. This makes me incredibly anxious. Magda Gazebo. On the disability support pension, I am allowed to work up to 30 hours a week. All the present arrangement does is punish me for being born. The job capacity assessment is a hate crime. A hate crime has two qualities. One quality is it breaches the law, and the other quality is that it infringes on the personal safety of an individual based on their identity. My personal safety is threatened by Centrelink, who harass and demean me in interactions regarding my capacity. The law the job capacity assessment breaks is the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which Australia signed in 2007. The so-called Commonwealth promised disabled peoples dignified inclusion in society, which I do not receive from the present system. The impairment tables are due to expire in April next year after 10 years of torment, but ELBO is intending to reintroduce them with minor revisions while giving $254 billion worth of tax cuts to our wealthiest. Mike Wazowski, I hope you agree politicians don't need a $9,000 tax break a year, and neither do you. I hope you agree this money should go to reforming the disability support pension that currently costs only $18.4 billion a year. My lowball estimate is an extra $9.2 billion a year would mean all of the sick and disabled people on JobSeeker right now could access the DSP. That's not even half of these tax breaks, and it's still less if you deduct the people already struggling on JobSeeker. Magda, I am writing to you because there was never any crisis of people exploiting the DSP. To even get to the job capacity assessment, in the 8 steps it takes to get approved, you need a permanent diagnosis, and trust me when I say that is easier said than done. Services Australia does not accept Polaroid pictures. Please advocate that the impairment tables introduced in 2012 by a Labor government to keep disabled people off the disability support pension expire entirely in April 2023. Every dollar I spend goes back into the economy. Isn't it better everyday people spend this money to fix the economy than give it to Australia's highest earners? The NDIS is just one half of the equation. The impairment tables used to grade my disability 35 points cannot be written in any way that is not a breach of my single human right, the CRPD. There needs to be a fair system in place, but this one is sick. Magda Szubanski, please advocate that someone with a lived experience of disability writes the next assessment guidelines in a way that is fair and dignified. Magda, please be a voice for disabled peoples. Warm regards, Dr. Sophie.